地球僕たちの星宇宙僕たちの世界未来僕たちの明日みんな僕たちの
Hello, welcome to another drive-in double feature. I'm Ryan.
I'm Nathan.
And this is the podcast where we talk about 2 movies a week every Tuesday and Thursday. But before I get into anything, we have a Patreon over at patreon.com/drive-in double feature podcast. It's just a fun little area. We got some fun conversations, playing some games, having a good time over at Patreon for only $5 a month, which you can also have. But do not worry, it does not affect any regular content. But today, we're going back into the kaiju realm right now, and we're not talking about Godzilla, and it's not a Toho movie, so this is one of the first times we've gone out where it's not Toho. What?
Oh my god.
it's
Well, I don't know what to do.
I know, completely different studio, but let's see how well they fare with the X from Outer Space, directed by Kazui Nihonmatsu. And
who only made like one other movie, right?
Yeah, he made one other movie after this, and then he just gave up because it's like, how can you mess with perfection?
That's true. That's true.
And this one, as you can imagine, it's a very sci-fi heavy movie where, going to outer space, it's like a casual Sunday drive. It's
just like, getting the gang together.
I mean, this movie is very space and themed, and also very, very 60s. It's like the first like 30 to 40 minutes of this movie is kind of like a slice of life. Like, if we lived, what if it's just like a fun little outer space movie?
I totally felt that. It was like, oh man, how did they even get a monster into this? Are they just gonna like I mean, they figure it out, they get it done, trust me. But yeah, it is just a slice of life. Like, this is what it's gonna be like in the future, guys.
I mean, it's like they have a social standing. Like, they fly to the moon base because they're trying to fly out to Mars, and they're trying to figure out why their space missions are being inhibited because there's these cosmic rays that are affecting their space travel. And then on the way, they encounter this like UFO, which one of them says it looks like an uncooked omelet.
Yes. Yeah.
And it kind of does look like a little egg, but anyway, they it ends like all their energy gets zapped from the plane, so they have to make an emergency stop over at the moon base. And it's really funny because there's a woman there working like the air traffic control who has like this weird history with one of the scientists on board, and so much so where she's just like one of the other people is like, hey, that spaceship's coming in way too fast, you need to tell them to slow down. She's like, you can do it, I'm not doing that.
Yeah, I like that. And she's like, no, don't talk to me. Yeah.
Didn't want to even acknowledge these people.
Yeah. God, I can't wait for the day till you get like a flat tire or something. It's like, oh, gotta make a pit stop at the moon real quick, and then you run into some oh god.
Yeah, one of your exes is there.
Oh god, you try to leave the small town of the moon, and then you just get sucked right back into it.
Of all the moon bases in the universe, why does she have to look into mine?
Yeah. You know what's funny about this movie? It's gonna sound a little weird, but there's so many like white people in this one. It's true. I mean, like, normally, these are Japanese centric movies, but we have like 3 or 4 like what I would assume are Americans in this movie.
Yeah, I think I didn't get an answer. This is just my assumption. They were trying to go for a more international appeal, kind of like, because this is around the same time that Godzilla was doing those space themed movies, and they had gotten like Nick Adams and these other people in there, and one of the main American actresses is Lisa.
Lisa, yeah.
and it's played by Peggy Neal, and I was just looking at her filmography, and she's not in a whole lot.
That's funny. I tried to look into her too because I was like really interested in like what her career was like. Because as we talked about with Adams there, like there's actors of a certain like nationality that would be in these movies, kind of like I'll be that guy for you, I can be that. But she didn't really do much, and I even found an article that was like nobody's talked to her in forever, and they finally got an interview with her. Unfortunately, she actually died very recently, but they did get an interview with her before her death and just her memories. And she's like in a newer movie from like 2018. She was in like another monster movie, like after a huge gap in her career.
And then the air traffic control woman named Michiko, like I said, she's kind of had this past history with one of the doctors, Dr. Sano. But it's kind of like weird at first because Michiko, like Lisa seems to be friends with Michiko, but like Michiko really does not like, it seemed like she likes Lisa at first.
Yeah. At first they seem like buddies.
Yeah. But then like all of a sudden they're like, it's this weird love triangle like between the three of them.
Mm-hmm.
And this is much later in the movie, but Lisa is like, oh, somebody cares for Dr. Sano more than I could. And it's obviously she's talking about Michiko. And I'm like, wait, like you were in love with him? Like I didn't get that at all.
I didn't get that last line at all. She said that like, oh, somebody will love Dr. Sano. And I was like, what? I was really confused. Like for real. I was like, this makes absolutely no sense. What does she mean by this? But yeah, I guess there was a romance there. I guess because he was a lead man and she was a leading woman, they just have to be romantic. That's just the way it is.
That's just how it is. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One of the other notable people in this movie is like, there's two scientists down there. There's Dr. I forget his name, but he's another American actor. But then the other one is Dr. Kaito, and he's played by Eiji Okada. And if you're a big film buff, you probably are aware of him because he's like in two very huge avant-garde art house movies, Hiroshima Mon Amour, and also The Woman in the Dunes, which is
for real. Wow.
He's the male lead in both of those movies. And
really? It's funny. I've never seen either of those movies. So,
I mean, I've seen Hiroshima Mon Amour, and that's a very, very dry movie, a very serious love romance movie. But I mean, it's very highly regarded and like all kinds of critical acclaim. Same with The Woman in Dune.
Yeah.
It's a very slow moving type of movie, and then it's like, oh, and then 4 years later he does this movie, which is, and the movie throughout the whole score, there's like this really happy like theme tune. No, 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 no.
I really liked the music in this one because it stood out so much.
Like I said, it's very 60s, and that's just kind of like one of the things in this movie is like it's very 60s. And like I said, when they arrive at the moon base, it's almost like they go to like it's like the moon base, like they have like a dining section, but it's not like a big mess hall type of thing. It's like a really like upper class, like fine dining restaurant where they're all wearing suits and dresses and things like
they
that.
Get dressed up.
And I'm like, like I just didn't understand the point of that. And they're like, oh, like doctor, will you have this dance? Like they do like dinner and dancing on this moon base.
They also like are off like outside of the base, and they're hopping around with happy music playing, just like almost like it's a playground on the moon. Like we're on the moon, we're gonna jump around a little, have some fun.
Well, that's what I was saying. Like that's the first 30 minutes of this movie. It's just they're just hanging out. It's not. There's no threat throughout the whole first. There's no stakes or anything like that. Just like, oh yeah, we're just having a good time here on the space station. Really and then what does happen though that kind of sets everything in motion is that the egg saucer ends up shooting out a spore, and it gets attached to one of their spaceship, and like, oh, well, we got to take it back, obviously, and that spore ends up growing and turning into a monster.
Yeah, well, and the little footprint that it leaves, and they're like, it looks like a chicken's foot. which is so silly, which goes hand in hand with the monster that we get.
This monster coming up, I will say, is a very infamous monster. Not so much in terms of like it's highly memorable, but it just looks really ridiculous. And
Yeah.
and I think even Japan, like, because I was reading like this monster gets like used in other movies and commercials just because of how goofy it looks.
Gotcha.
And the best way to describe it is it's got like the shape of a chicken with like the skin texture of a lizard,
Mm-hmm.
and then its head looks like a jet.
Oh, a jet. Yeah, that makes sense. That makes sense. Yeah, because I was thinking it's got a beak like a chicken, and then like its head is really oddly shaped, kind of like an overcooked omelet in a way, if that makes any sense.
Oh yeah, I guess so.
Yeah, that's just how I describe things.
Is that how you like your omelets?
Yeah, I love it overcooked. Yes.
Yeah,
but
nice and rubbery.
But the name is really weird. It's Galala, right?
Gilala, yeah.
Gilala, which is I love that scene where they name it and then they're like, yeah, Gilala. And then they're like, are we really naming the monster that? And everyone's taking this dead seriously, and they're like, yeah, it's its name.
Well, because they name it after a metal, which is like it's like gilalium.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah, the very famous metal. And the monster in this one, he can suck things as energy, and that's like his big thing is like he loves sucking energy from things. And he is also able to teleport himself by turning into a giant orb and flying.
Yeah. A giant ball of energy that just like flies around.
It looks like a little mini sun.
Yeah. If I was to give this movie one prop, the miniatures are really good. And this makes me think of that because when he flies over as the orb, he like burns stuff along the way. And also there's like a really cool red light that shines on the miniatures as he flies above. But it is super bizarre that he can just turn into an energy ball.
So let me ask you, what is your opinion of Gilala?
Gilala?
We always go for the aesthetics whenever we see these monsters. So
aesthetically, he's silly. He's goofy. I don't hate him. I actually don't hate the idea of the monster. I guess he's amusing. He's not boring. So you know what? I'll give him an okay. I'll give him he's all right in my book.
Yeah. I his roar. He does roar a lot in this.
Yes,
movie.
he does. Yeah. He also skips. You notice that he skips around town.
Yeah, he's got a little hop to his step.
Yeah.
But his roar, it kind of sounds like, I guess it would sound like a chicken, like if that, like
yeah,
if you like a giant mutated chicken, like. But it really sounds like this. And so you can kind of get an idea of like hearing that for about 45 minutes, something like that. And
yeah,
one thing I do like though about the movie is that how casually they treat space exploration, where they're just like, it just like, oh, we have to go figure out how to kill this thing, and so they're like, let's just get back onto the spaceship, and and they take off again. So it's like they have to just all these spaceships and everything like that. It's just so casual. Like, yeah, just take the space cruiser and just take it out for a little while.
We're going out there.
Yeah, like like you're just hopping in your car.
But it's weird though because like it's just a side scene that made me laugh really hard. Is because some people don't like it because you remember the one dude that they have to force to tag along with them to fly back, and he doesn't want to be there.
Dr. Stein.
Yeah, but I love the scene where he gets served the rations. He's like, oh, these rations again. He's like complaining about the quality of space food, and it's like treating Lisa like, Lisa, you need to cook better food for me.
And Lisa is a scientist too, and they're treating her like yeah, she's a scientist. She's like, I'm a scientist, not a cook. Like, like, what do you want? What do you want from me here?
Yeah. But yeah, Gilala destroys towns for actually a lot longer than you'd expect in this movie. I'm used to Godzilla movies where like usually the city destruction is kind of a smaller part of the movie. That's what most of this movie is when he's in it, I should say. When they're
Yeah, yeah. Well, yeah. Please, thank
yeah,
you.
sorry.
No, I really, to me, it's like This one is. I'll just say it's not a very good movie. I don't think
No, I
it's
agree.
it's it's very very like the characters in it. They're very bland. I mean, they don't have a whole lot of things standing out from except like
Mhm.
there's like one guy that's like a bit of a he's got a bit of like humorous side type of thing. He's like he's like the funny side character. It's like who's always complaining and he like wants to eat food all the time because
Yeah.
he's fat, so he obviously loves to
Haha,
eat.
yeah.
And so, um, but it's a lot of explaining again, like explaining what Gilala is, and it's a lot of city destruction, which it's fun, but at a certain point, it's like okay, let's get into something else because it is he's the only monster in this movie,
Yeah.
and that's the only one they have to interact with. So it's not like there's going to be a monster fight later in the movie.
Yeah, there's nothing really to look forward to. And no, I agree. I think it's a movie with a lot of nothing. They don't do a lot, and it's way too slow for a monster movie. And just it at least has like a human story that's funny, but I wouldn't call it good by any means. Later in the movie, Lisa gets stuck under like debris, and that's like a good chunk of the movie of them just trying to free her from the debris.
Yeah, and they I mean probably like the one scene where like we actually see like destruction like being affecting a character, I think, in like one of these kaiju movies, because usually it's them like watching the kaiju like
Mhm.
destroy buildings, and this one I feel like you'd actually do see like an actual consequence of like their city destruction where it's
That's
like
true.
affecting the main characters,
Yeah.
because it does squish her legs like that and they have to pry it off of her. Another funny sequence though is there's a scene where they're trying to lure Gilala into a certain spot. So
Mhm.
they have to like get into a Jeep, and Gilala is
Yeah.
like literally chasing this Jeep,
Mhm.
and it does like bump, like the Jeep does end up crashing and everything. I'm like, oh, their brave efforts like got Gilala over here with the Jeep, but it doesn't look convincing at all because it's just like hard green screen of like Gilala's like foot or arm or
Oh
whatever,
yeah, and it's
and the shot. And they do this later in the movie where they do show Gilala like killing somebody and by stepping on them, and it
mhm.
just you just see somebody standing, you just see like a big foot just come right down on them.
And it's like it's a poorly blue screen where like little elements are missing and stuff.
Yeah, I mean, how they figure out to do how they eventually do figure out to kill Gilala is they have to use the metal that Gilala is named after, and
Yes.
what better way to take out this monster by spraying it with silly string.
That's what it looks like. It got sprayed by like a fire, what do you call it? Extinguisher, just a bunch of white foam on it. And he
Yeah,
dies. Very underwhelming.
he doesn't die, but
That's true. That's true.
he returns back to his spore form because by spraying it with this metal quotes is it's limiting his absorption of other energy, so he can no longer absorb energy, so he returns back to their spore form. And they're just like, okay, well, he's back into his spore, so let's just stick it in a rocket and just send it back to outer space. All good now.
Yeah.
Wash your hands of that.
Do you know, I did like I saw some clips of the English dub of this movie. Have you seen any of this?
No, please share.
So in the end, you know that line we talked about, like I learned a lesson today. In the American version, she says that the lesson she learned was, and I'm not joking. Sometimes people just need to stay where they come from, meaning like it needed to stay out in space. But that's a really, really bad moral to sell people. Yeah, just stay where you were born. No need to leave. Don't
Yeah,
come here.
yeah. Don't think about exploring this.
Uh-uh.
Uh, and too, one thing I did read about the English dub is that Lisa, she didn't even get to dub herself for the
Sounds
English
about
version.
right. Yeah.
But I'm assuming like her and then these other American actors were part of like that acting troupe or whatever, where it's just like they had this stable of American actors, or not even like actors really. It was just like people that they wanted to play Americans in their movie, and they didn't necessarily have to be in there. Like, remember, like one guy was like a college professor, and like one
Yes.
guy
Yeah.
was like a journalist. So they're just like, hey, be in our movie. You're a cop now. You're an American cop.
Hey, you know what? It's a good paycheck.
Wanted to read to you though. There's the alternate film titles of this movie, and I
Oh
don't know
boy.
if you've heard of some of them.
No.
So I'm just gonna read you the list of alternate titles that I found, and some of them are pretty self-explanatory and unoriginal. Uh, X, a monster from space, the monster from space, the X monster from outer space, monster from outer space, a monster in space, a monster from other space, monster from the universe, and then here's the more wackier ones. Etika, the monster of the galaxies,
Okay.
alert in space, Gilala the space monster, giant space monster Gilala, uh, Gilala Frankenstein's devil egg.
Didn't they have a bunch of monster movies named Frankenstein?
Well, yeah, that was a German thing. Like all the
Oh,
German movies, they're called Frankenstein, and then
okay.
and Portugal, my favorite, the chicken lizard from Mars.
Ah, yes, that is a good one.
Um, And I'm sure you're wondering, how well did this movie do in America? Well, guess what? It was
Yeah.
not released in America, so
Oh
it
yeah. Yeah.
it did not have a theatrical release in America. It was another one like some of the later Godzilla ones where they did make their own American dub of this one, but it was just released strictly onto television.
Probably for the better. Probably
Yeah,
for the
yeah, probably so. And but this movie is a Criterion movie. It's a
I
at
saw
least.
that.
And so if you're a big film buff, like I said before, this is Okada's third movie in the Criterion collection, technically. So
So that's why I recommend this movie. It's a cinematic classic and it's worth watching.
yeah,
Real
definitely. I mean,
real brain teaser.
yeah, who can never thought about it? But it's it's a very it's humorous to watch. It's just it's a movie for a good laugh, I'll say. But
Mm.
for the most part, it's not, the action sequences aren't that compelling, and there's not really much of a human story to really go with, because at least with like Ebera and what was the other one, Gigan, where that's kind of like this like mystery element to
Mm.
it, or like the teenager, like the teens like infiltrating like this
Yeah.
evil layer. So it's like stuff like that where it's like, if you're gonna do something like that, you need to give me something like better to kind of sink my teeth into. And I don't really think like casual hangout space movie for the first half is really what I was looking for.
No. Yeah, that's the problem. It's just a little too slice of life. And I feel like if there's two genres that don't match, slice of life movies and monster movies. That doesn't I don't think that clashes all too well.
Now,
So I don't
now
know.
I will add though, I wouldn't be opposed to seeing a slice of life like 60 space movie where it's just some kind of
Oh
like
yeah.
hanging out, but it's like a lot more like human emotion involved and everything. I think that would have been kind of a fun like element.
Kind of like Dark Star, maybe in a way.
Yeah, but it's like a lot more 60s minded or whatever, where it's just like they could have done like like a romance, like a romantic comedy or something like that in outer space. I think that would have been kind of fun.
I think that would be a lot of fun.
But yeah, like I said, this movie is remembered more so because of the monster and just because it looks so ridiculous. Not so much that this movie is good, and it's very, very out there type of monster that gets reused a lot in other movies, and they use it in like a lot of Japanese commercials. Like if you go on YouTube and just type in the monster's name, it's like been in a bunch of Japanese commercials.
That's funny. I like that.
And like you were kind of alluding to earlier, that there is a sequel to this movie that is called The Attack on the G8 Summit.
Which I think is so funny. Out of all the things, it's so specific.
And I do want to cover that one day. And but that movie, from what I've seen, is very tongue in cheek and very much like this is a goofy movie type of thing. So
it's probably the best way to handle it.
So I want to see how much better that is. But from what I understand, though, you don't really even need to see this one. But I do. I wanted to add it in there just to make sure we did have that extra context to it.
Mm-hmm.
But who knows? Maybe one day we'll get to that point. But we got a lot of monsters to cover before we start getting into it. So I think that's going to wrap it up. Nathan, would you recommend this movie?
No, I wouldn't recommend it. It's good for a laugh, but there's much better kaiju out there.
Yeah, very chuckle-worthy movie. Like, oh man, like just go look at pictures of the monster and you pretty much get the same experience from it. But
exactly.
So, but I think that's going to wrap it up. Like I said, we will be covering another monster during Bondzilla week. But Nathan, we're going to go back to our regularly scheduled program finally. What are we going to be talking about next time?
Ryan, we are going to be talking about the giant spider invasion. Yeah, we got a creature feature coming up from 1975, and that is streaming right now on Tubi.
Terrific. Cannot wait. I love a good eight-legged adventure. But if you have any thoughts, opinions about this podcast, please email us over at drivein-double-feature-podcast@gmail.com. Don't forget to X us on X at DIDFpod. And once again, check out the Patreon at patreon.com/drivein-double-feature-podcast. But until next time.